Rodafleming in the Philippines here. Now, I'm kind of revisiting something here because I've been thinking about it and I've been reading about it, and it kind of changed some of the ways I'm thinking. And this is to do with male homosexuality. Since the 1960s, this has been categorized into three types. Certainly in the West. I mean, all these people tend to, they're right about these, tend to be Westerners. It's mainly Westerners, you know. Three types, and these three types are gender organized, age organized, and egalitarian. And just so you know, gender organized is where one party adopts the role of and plays a woman, and the other guy's standard masculine man. And this could be anything from, you know, a very feminine, what you might call a very feminine gay guy, through to a full transsexual woman. You know, and she's absolutely a woman. But even in the case of feminine gay guy or a femboy, she's going to want to play the woman. And if you go onto places like Reddit, which is very good for information about this stuff like this, you'll find that this is what these femboys are looking for. I mean, they're looking for, you know, at least many of them are looking for big, strong, powerful men to take them. You know, and they've adopted this kind of ambivalent gender presentation because they live in a society that doesn't really want them to transition fully, but at the same time they just can't be masculine, you know. So that goes from them through to the full transsexuals, you know, or fully transitioned. Perhaps not surgically, but certainly hormonally and in terms of social presentation, sexual presentation, everything. They're absolutely girls to boys. Now, age organized is different. Age organized is really much more complicated. This has always been posited to be very similar to the Greek form of what's called pederasty, in which an older youth or young man takes a younger boy as lover and partner. And in some cases this was largely didactic, you know, there wasn't any sexual component, but in other cultures it definitely was. I mean, in the Wakashudo of Japan, samurai would take a boy who would be the apprentice and would train him to be a full samurai, but you know, they would share beds, and they share the bed, and the young boy would be the samurai's sexual partner until he was old enough himself to grow a beard. And the third type, which is this confection of the modern world, which we have kind of called the new gay man, is the egalitarian type, something that the Americans are very fond of, the egalitarian. They always think that egalitarianism, well, in that, it's always been posited that this is a relationship of two equals, you know, they're all exactly the same. And I'm going here to tell you tonight that that's absolute baloney. It's total nonsense. It just doesn't happen. What actually happens is that this is still pederasty, but it's not quite the same as the age organized form. This is a status organized pederasty, so that the person of dominant status will penetrate the person of lower status. Simple as that. And then they will say, ah yes, but what about when, you know, they swap round? Well, all they do is change status roles. That's all they do. I'll be captain now for a while. That's basically all it is. So this idea of egalitarian male homosexuality is bunk. It doesn't actually exist. If you go again on places like Reddit, Reddit's very good for this. You see a tremendous amount of information on sites like that. There are a lot of good WordPress sites as well, and Medium. All of these are good. You'll see that the notion that egalitarian is really egalitarian is something, it doesn't really happen. Egalitarian, all male homosexuality is either gender organized or status organized. And to a certain extent, it's actually possible to argue that it's really just one thing. And it's all about status. Because in that model where the femboy takes the girl role, that's a submissive role, right? So there's a status thing going on here too. So I have to ask questions about this egalitarian thing. I don't think it exists. The difference between gender organised and status organised, or at least conventional pederasty, is that gender organised is permanent. The girl is always a girl. She'll grow up and die being a girl. She can't change it. She's not going to change that. That's what she is, right? In pederasty, it's always cyclical. You know, what happens is that the boy enters. If you take the classic example of the English public school, which is actually a fee-paying private school, but never mind, that's the English for you. What would happen is that boys enter at the age of 11. They're given girl names by the older boys. They're described in highly, if you read into this, they're described in highly sexualized terms, with a lot of reference to their bottoms, to their legs, that sort of thing. These boys are chosen by the senior boys as what are called fags. A fag in English slang, actually, of the time, the 19th century, was a job you just didn't want to do, right? It was like a chore. And so the fag was the person he was nominally, as far as the school authorities were concerned, he came in to clean your room, make your bed, bring you your cups of tea, that sort of thing. That was what fagging was. Of course, he also hopped into bed with you at night, kept you quiet that way. Then, that happened in the first 2 years of the school, you know, year 1 and year 2, whatever it is, you know, I'm too old for that sort of thing now. Then there would be a kind of hiatus, because, you know, the boys would be chosen in the first year by a 5th year boy. So they would stay with him through the older boy's 6th year. Then the older boy leaves school. And then this younger boy, who's now, whatever, 13 or so, goes for 2 years. He's not involved in any of this at all. He's in that quiet zone in between. And maybe he fools about a little bit with his friend, but there's none of these long-term bonds are established. But then when he gets to be in 5th year, which I guess is what, 16, he chooses the first year. Right, one of the new incoming crop of first year. And what's interesting about this is that what actually happens here is that the younger partner in these relationships is turned into a girl by being penetrated. Simple as that. That's what happens. And she will remain that way. She stays a girl. The older guy, leaves the school and she's in a kind of in-between place for a while. But then she gets to be 5th year and she gets to take a young boy. And by doing so, by penetrating the young guy, she reclaims masculinity and becomes a man, right? And you'll find that when you read about these things, that nobody found this at all strange. This was all just part of growing up. What was odd would have been if a person got to 5th year and they said, no, I don't want to do that. I just want myself. I want to be, you know, I want to stay being a girl. I don't want to start penetrating someone else. I want to be penetrated, because that makes you a homo. And that would have been, in these schools, that would have been absolutely, you know, you would have been ostracized. You might not have survived. It's a very, very interesting thing. You know, it's very complex. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't know anything about it until about a year ago when I started reading into this. And it's absolutely fascinating. You know, I mean, yes, you knew it happened in that kind of school, you know, but you didn't, it's such a complex system. And what happens is, you see what happened there in that classic pederastic system is that the low status person, come and say hello, the low status person becomes a high status person, right? Reclaiming masculinity. And in what they call egalitarian homosexuality, they just swap. You just swap, oh, tonight I'm going to be the guy, you'll be the girl, right? It's just that simple. This is just the same. There's actually no difference. There isn't really such a thing as egalitarian homosexuality. There's no such thing as egalitarian sex. Somebody has to dominate. Anyway, my wife is calling me, so I'll leave you. Take care. Bye.